All right, we are live. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to this week's Unconventional Wisdom on Grief and Loss. My name is Delilah De La Rosa. I am the person that is receiving the unconventional wisdom and cultivating it myself.
Hmm.
This unconventional wisdom on grief and loss. And to my side here is Steven Morrison. He is the creator of Spiritual Workout, the belief system that that's pretty much the foundation, the basis from that we draw from, or that this unconventional wisdom draws from,
Yeah,
right? And he
turning
is
my phone off. Excuse me.
what was that?
I was
Oh,
turning my phone off. Excuse me. That was really
and he
rude.
is also the author of An Extra Year, Grief and Loss in the New Age. Do you have the copy? Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah.
I, for the past, I don't know, 12 weeks, have always been the one that's been putting the copy of the on screen here. But since I came out to New York, I cannot find it. I swear I packed it, so it has to be somewhere. If it's not here, we know it's definitely on the other side of the country. How are you today, Stephen?
I'm quite well, thank you. I'm eager to dive in and see where you are today, this evening.
Excellent. Also want to welcome any and all non-physical entities. My mother, she's basically the reason why I am receiving this unconventional wisdom.
Yeah.
She passed away in November of last year from pancreatic cancer. She had about a 2.5 month bout with cancer, and yeah, have been for the past 15 weeks. We've been processing uh, loss of mine. And if you've been with us for this long, you know that why I put that in quotation marks. Um, so want to welcome my mom if she's around, if she's tuning in, as well as Duder, who is Steven's long partner from that was in the book, one of the subjects in the book, An Extra Year. Duder, if you're around, I don't know, Steven, if you want to let me know.
Yeah, he's been a little quieter the last 2 or 3 weeks,
Interesting. Okay. Because I wanted to talk
but
to you about that.
they're both here.
I want to talk to you about that because I saw from our last session that you brought that up, and I was like, "Oh, wait, I would love to know more about that." And we never got to it. So
I'm
definitely
happy to, whatever you want to.
talk
Yeah,
about that.
I love talking to dead people, as you know. So
Right.
and about them.
Yeah. And I say I don't mind,
Yeah.
but I kind of admire people's ability to connect in that way. Um, So, yes, and any and all non-physical entities, welcome. All right. So, before we get into that, what we're just talking about, I
Hmm.
wanted to update um, you on what transpired because I think, well, not that I think, I know last session we talked about the upcoming visit, the first time visit to what was my mom's old apartment, former apartment, and now my father's current apartment. And I say it in such words because although they were officially married, they weren't officially divorced. They were separated for like 25 years plus,
Right.
So, or like over 20 years, like 20, 25 years, in there. Um, and and they maintained a pretty cordial relationship, although there was some unfinished business there, um, uh, definitely some unfinished business there. But in the end, my mom had a lot of love for my father. Maybe she didn't like him necessarily, but had a lot of love for him, and definitely wanted us to maintain a good relationship with him. So that's where that was. So basically, my mom, she had lived in the apartment that they had both got, at the time they were both together. And I had already been into boarding school, but she had they had gotten the apartment together. It's a rental. It's a rental, New York City, nothing new. I mean,
Right.
people have,
Yeah.
multi-year rentals.
Yeah.
They kind of look at it almost as like if it's their own, like owners of the home,
Like an asset. Yeah.
And so, and being that she had been there for 30 plus years, she had was paying a very low rent. And so she was like living in a classic 6 marvelous Mrs. Maisel apartment, New York City, for 1550. So I think, like, our thing was, let's see if anyone can take advantage of it. At the time that it was available, my father wasn't jumping for it, but I told him, I was like, it would be really ideal. This is like back in January, that it would be really ideal if he would take over the apartment. And there were some reasons for why, very valid reasons for why he didn't want to take it over. Because, he has a girlfriend, and there was just some living situation where it wasn't ideal for her. Not to mention, I'm thinking also that, does she want to live in, like the ex's place that she's lived in for 30 years? And so I told him, I was like, please let her know that this is like ideal, like this, it's a win-win situation,
Yes.
but totally understandable, Anyway, in March which was pretty much my like deadline to make a decision on the apartment, because I was actually carrying the cost of the apartment. Low rents, but nobody was living in it, and I'm paying for it. So it was like, I was feeling it. And so I was just like, March, I'm just gonna make a decision on what to do with it. And he called March and was like, hey, is it still available? Was great. He was gonna see if his girlfriend, take a look at it, see how she feels. That weekend, I was like, please go for it and tell her, like, insist that, that I insist on, like, this would be a great opportunity, that there's, my mom wasn't like, oh my God, like, I don't want him to live there. Like, she was not, And so that's what ended up happening. They ended up moving in or like in the process of moving in. And so Friday of last week, I was the first time since I've been back to New York that I went to go see the apartment, now that it's my father's apartment, with his girlfriend. And I think last session I sort of, was just kind of airing out some unease or some inner something or other that was making me a little nervous or uncomfortable about the situation, like, I think we talked about how there was a little small part of me that felt like I may be selling my mother out. Why? Because there was unfinished business there when she was here in this plane, and had she been alive, like, she would be petty about some things, you know what I mean? So petty or righteously petty, whatever you want to think, but yeah, it's like I know that she would be like, right? Um, and it's funny too because there's some people around me who kind of react in a petty way too, and I'm just kind of like, this is not helpful, you know.
About this in particular?
Yeah, about
Yeah.
this whole arrangement, like, not that they're saying like, oh, that he shouldn't move in with the girlfriend, but they're always just they always say stuff that is basically like, that woman has nothing on your mother kind of vibe,
So it's
right?
almost looking out for you, as expecting that you're going to have some
Oh,
say about
absolutely.
it.
Like,
Yeah.
they think that I'm gonna key with them on that,
Yeah.
like I'm co-signing on it. And it's like, I'm like, no, not helpful. Not helpful. Some people it's playful, right?
Yeah.
But I think that like when I bring up, I'm like, wow, it's gonna be time, to head over there first time. It's a change, right? But I always say, I'm like, this is I've been feeling, I mean, since December.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the best, most ideal situation, like it
Mhm.
feels this way, like wholeheartedly, right? Um, Even with the optics being a little strange, you know, in this
Yeah.
context, you
I
know
get
what I
it.
mean? It's a little, it could be seen as a little strange, like my dad moving in with his girlfriend and my mom. Yeah, it's just, knowing the context, right?
Mhm.
And but even with that particular context, it just felt right. And so I think we kind of worked out some stuff pertaining to that, like a little bit of uh unease about the situation. And I also had a session with one of the other folks on my professional care team, um, where we, I guess, instead of tapping on some energy that was there, it's like we did their modality, which is like NET. So it's like another means of getting, transmuting this energy.
Mhm.
So instead of like inquiry for beliefs and stuff, like this was like another way in, right?
Mhm.
And that was really good.
Good.
That was really good. It was like, these two things were really leading up to what transpired on Friday. So, once Friday came, I wasn't feeling like anxious or anything like that. Going over there, um, I was feeling pretty neutral, like just pretty neutral, like, huh, I
Mhm.
wonder what's going on. And so as soon as I got there, I didn't feel that little, I didn't feel activated or triggered in any way, like energetically, like I didn't feel verklempt, as soon as I was like going into the building. I didn't feel like, oh my God, this is like my mom, like I didn't feel any of that. And in a good way,
Yeah.
in a good way, right?
If you weren't feeling those things, what were you feeling? Well, you said neutral.
Pretty neutral. Like I was just like, I'm going up to the house. Like
Yeah.
it felt very neutral. Like
Okay.
like
Yeah.
neutral. Like it didn't feel emotional going up. As soon as I arrived to the building, I didn't have flashbacks. I didn't feel energetically heavy, verklempt, like that little feeling, that gulp in your throat or heaviness in the chest, nothing of the sort.
Mhm.
Felt very neutral, you
Mhm.
know. Um just kind of matter of fact, right? Like I'm going up the steps. It didn't feel like an unfamiliar place, but
Right.
it didn't have that jolt. It didn't have that, that it had other times,
Mhm.
right? So, going up the elevator, all of that, nothing, nothing. As soon as I go, knock on the door, oh, it's a new door, right? Because I think I don't know if I mentioned this in the
You
session,
did.
but the Con Edison folks, they
Yeah.
broke the locks. Okay. So, new door. So, okay, already a change from,
Symbolic.
new door.
Hmm.
Um, and it's a new door. Like it looks new too. Like it's, you know what I mean? The old one was like, little old school. New door. And then my dad, opened the door, and I actually had no idea what condition the apartment was going to be in. I didn't know where
Yeah.
they were in their moving process. My dad has been very, I don't want to say like tiptoeing, but he's just trying to make it really chill for me, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
I really
Nice.
appreciate that. While also trying to make his girlfriend at ease too, because this is, like I said, it's not this brand new, I mean, there's
Okay.
context
Yeah.
here. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So, and no funny business. This is, I mean, they were together after my parents were very well separated. Okay. Like there's no, I just want to make that clear because I had to make that clear for some people. I think
Yeah, I get it.
thinking that this is one of the women that my dad fooled around with on my mom. And I'm like, no, if that were to be the case, this is not happening, guys. Like, what the fuck do you think I am? Anyway, but yeah, so as soon as I get in the door, I see all, like I said, I didn't know what condition, what state it was going to be in, whether they were going to be already kind of moved in already.
Mhm.
And then it's like, oh, damn, all right. Or if, it was going to be like a whole mess, transition,
Boxes
like what's
everywhere.
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and it was that. It was a lot of boxes everywhere. A lot of my mom's stuff was still in its place.
Mm.
Right. And so, but like not in front of you, like decorated, because again, it's like, I mean, they did the floors, they buffed the floors, they painted. The painting on the walls was like a major difference, and it was good because honestly, Steven, it's like going into the place, it was a continuation of what I felt landing at the building. Like it felt like it was a different place. Like now it's my father's place.
Hmm.
I didn't feel the same feeling, energy that I had felt when it was her place, and even when we were going over there when she was sick,
Hmm.
right? Because that was like, whew,
Yeah.
um, and I would say that like, okay, well, I'll go into that a little after. I just want to like kind of tell
Sure.
what the actual event, what happened, and then what I was thinking about afterwards, because
Okay.
it brought up a lot after, up until this point, it's just
Hmm.
like, wow, this is really interesting. Okay. So I go in there and it didn't, like I said, still neutral, Stephen, neutral, like everything matter of fact. Like I was like my dad, he, again, very chill. His, girlfriend and my aunt came over, his sister, my aunt came over. It was really good to see her. His girlfriend made us some food to eat, and it was like basically a way of like, okay, this is, your what it was. You're my coming in for the first time. I wanted to reassure Nilka, that's my father's girlfriend, that like, oh, I'm so glad you guys moved in here. This is like what my intention is. I took my mom's pots and pans,
Yeah.
because I saw I had space here. And the person um, that cooks for us here, she could use some more pots and pans. So I was like, this is great. Okay, this is awesome. Let me do that. And my husband got to speak with Nika a little bit off to the side while I was going with my dad. He was taking me to each room to sort of like, you know, my get like gently, like, okay, what are you thinking about keeping? What can we keep? Or what do you
Hmm.
think? You know what I mean? Like going through a little audit, I guess, right?
Hmm.
And and I guess, my husband took his girlfriend to the side and was like, so how are you feeling, with the new place and stuff like that. And my dad never mentioned this, but I could assume, I don't know if he was exaggerating this particular reason for why she didn't want to move there. Because apparently she wanted to remain close to her mom, who lives in the building next to where they were living, right? And because she's the mom is taking care of her brother, and so she just wants to look out for them, right? Very
Hmm.
valid reason, and I'm sure that that's true.
Yeah.
Yet, there were just certain things that came up that didn't make it an ideal situation for them anymore, and so this was like the best option, right? And so she did bring up to my husband that she was hesitant to go. She didn't like the idea because she's like, it's his ex, and she passed away, and it's just like, it's a little strange, like, to wrap my head around the idea. Like, I wanted, I guess something new for us,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And which that's why I told my dad, I was like, please let her know that, like, this would be a great situation. Like, take advantage of this rent, the space you have an elevator in the building. They didn't have an elevator. um but yeah, my dad didn't mention that to me, right? And but I think it's because my dad's just like really he's wanting to be the peacekeeper.
The piece. Yeah, exactly.
And you know what? Take on that
Let
role.
him do it. Yeah. Express.
Take on that role,
Have
okay?
at it.
Grow up. No. Because guess what? I had to do when I was a little
Yeah.
girl.
No more.
It's like, be the father, which actually brings me to what I've been thinking about.
Okay.
So yeah, so we got kind of through the stuff, and we all ate there and stuff, and it was like a good, it was like a good. I was just so surprised and proud of happy, glad, with it feeling so neutral, like not heavy. And I got clarity on, like, okay, this is the project, like, this is what I'm gonna tackle on next. Like, this is doable. Whereas before, I was feeling like, oh my God, like, overwhelming. But no, I was just like, doo-doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo-doo, like, just kind of envisioning how it's all gonna go down. um and just seeing that, and also, not, we're not fans of a sense of urgency here, introducing a sense of urgency. But I feel compelled to, in a good way, to really, you know, uh, make that a project with a clear endpoint.
For you mean, in terms of your
Clear
involvement?
out
Yeah.
that apartment,
Yeah.
like the next time I go there, probably this Sunday, I'm wanting to clear out my mom's closets, get her clothes out. My dad, he was like, "Hey, we moved her clothes from the closet in the bedroom that we're gonna move into the little room." And so I was like, "Absolutely. Oh my God, please." Like,
Yeah.
of course, but this one, I'm just giving you an example of how it's going down, how my dad is being, because, I don't know if I painted the picture, but like, I was a lot closer to my mother,
Yeah.
like a lot closer with my mom. Like, my mom, it's like very comfortable. Like, my mother
Yeah.
knows me. You know what I mean? Like, she knows what I'm up to. I know what she's up to. Like, we know each other on a very deep level. You know what I mean? She's
Hmm.
like friend, mom. My dad is like, I'm getting to know him now,
Yeah.
more. Like, it's not that's what I'm seeing right now.
Well, that we can talk about that or don't even have to, but just energetically, this is what happens in systems and family systems and in
This is what I
biological
this
systems.
is what I wanted to get into
Okay.
because yeah, it was like there was the going over there, loving the fact that it felt neutral. It felt like an organic transition without erasing my mother. It didn't feel like an
Yeah.
erasure. Am I saying that
Erasure.
correctly? Erasure, right? Okay. Like erasure? An erasure of it didn't feel like an erasure of my mother.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like a transition. Like I didn't feel my mother's energy at the apartment. It felt like like a natural transition
Mm-hmm.
without erasing her,
Yeah.
even though her energy wasn't there. You know what I mean? Like her I didn't feel that there,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But it wasn't like negative. It wasn't in this way where I felt like, oh my God, my mother's going, like they're erasing my mom. Like it didn't feel like that whatsoever. And I think there was perhaps some fear, concern, small concern that that's how I would have felt.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't feel that at all. Not one bit. It just felt like it felt like a new apartment with my dad. Like it felt like a transition, like the change was happening, but not in this way of erasing. It's just evolving,
Mm-hmm.
right? And also, and I think I mentioned this in the last session that I didn't associate my mother with that apartment. When I was thinking about what I think associate my mother with was like the botanical gardens, which I went to on Sunday, right, with my brother. That definitely brings up more,
Mm-hmm.
for me. Whereas it's like, oof, okay, I miss my mom, like her physical presence.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think it was that going to the botanical gardens and the days leading up to today, where I just started thinking about energetically, like what you were about to say, energetically, what the feeling is, what the experience is. And I had a conversation with my husband about, I think it was yesterday, where I was just like, wow, um, like I see some of the things, like some of my personality traits. I see where I get some of these things from my mom, how they've been influenced, by my mom and by my father. And one of the things, for instance, that like I was feeling energetically and now articulating
Mm-hmm.
was that my mom was so like she could bring something up that she may want to do with me or my brother or someone. And if we're like, no, I can't do it, then she's just like, all right. You know what I mean? Like she just goes and figures something else out.
Mm-hmm.
My dad is much more insistent. He's a little more pushy, right? Not a pushy person, like he's not gonna be like, come on, not like that. But he's a little bit more insistent. And And my mom would never want to be like that because she didn't like it when people were insistent with her, right?
Yeah.
So I see myself as having both of those kind of qualities. Like sometimes when I really want something to happen, right? I can get kind of pushy or insistent especially if it involves someone else or other people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I kind of press the issue like, come on, let's do it. And that could be annoying sometimes. And I see it with my dad. I'm like, huh. I'm like, what kind of, like, when I see my dad, like if I don't pick up the WhatsApp call or text, then he'll try to go on the regular phone. And then if it's like, a couple of hours and stuff, then he'll like contact my husband. I'm like, dude. Like, and it's why is because he wants something done or response on his time,
Yeah. Well.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And hey, you have every right. You have every right. But it was just really standing out for me because I was like, what is it about relating with my dad that feels very different relating with my mom,
Mm-hmm.
And that was something I was like that they were on the opposite ends of. My mom is very much like, I'm not trying to be a bugaboo because I hate it when people do it to me. You know what I mean? And so I have a little bit of both, I have a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I just became I was like, wow, I had such a great mom. Like, oh, it was just, and it had me a bit sad because I just was really like missing that dynamic that I just don't have with anyone else. And and I'm not saying that there's no other types of loving dynamics that can't measure up. Of course. Of course. Me, I don't do that, Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about me, like it's never gonna measure up my mother's love. No, I'm not doing that. And I will say that it's because of her essence, her spirit, who she was. It's a unique dynamic,
Oh, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Her energy, you know what
Yes.
I mean? Which I don't have to completely disconnect from. It's just that there's that physical part of it that I will never experience again in this plane. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a fact,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm accepting it. Um, I'm accepting it. If I'm thinking of what accepting is, I felt like conceptually I've accepted it. I don't know if crying about it means that I'm still in the process or haven't fully accepted it. I don't know if that,
Not necessarily.
yeah, yeah. Because it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like when I cry about it that it's because I'm not accepting this.
Right. And you're the arbiter of that.
Right, right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because I don't feel like there's anything wrong, because when I thought about that, I did get I guess sad, I started crying about it because it was like I just started remembering like how, with going and meeting with my dad, and this is going to be evolving. Okay. This is going to be evolving. This is an opportunity right now, it seems, this event is kind of creating an opportunity for me to get to know my dad, for us to get to know each other
Mm-hmm.
more, you know, and for him to perhaps play that role, I don't know if I want to say step up, but um, an opportunity to perhaps meet some needs that I had,
Yeah.
for him, with regard to my father, but I'm not, believe me, I don't have an agenda.
Well, you
Okay.
don't have that belief or set of beliefs.
Right. Yeah. I don't have an agenda. My intention here is to be open-hearted, open-minded here. We already have a good relationship. I love my father. It's a loving relationship. Um, it's not like there's no animosity. We're not estranged, but it just was never a close relationship where like my dad really, really knows my ins and outs and stuff. Like he knows some things, you know what I mean? But like, in terms of the kind of conversations, the way that my mother knew me, no.
Right.
You know? And being, with that being the case, I noticed that, I going and meeting out with my father still, and this is what I was saying on the way to the apartment to my husband, that I'm going to look at this as like, I'm going to meet my dad, going to meet up with my dad, and it doesn't have to be an event, right? Like, I don't want this to be like an event, because I was starting to feel a little crampy and stuff. And I was just like, and I was getting a little nervous because I felt like, okay, I have to perform, like,
Yeah.
and my husband was like, just let him know you're crampy, you're about to get your period, instead it's your father, right? And I'm like, yeah, like, exactly. Like, this is not about, not even like I'm going to New Jersey to my aunts and uncles' house. You know what I mean? It's like, this is, I want this to be on the level of familiarity as it was with my mother.
Yes.
That's a good intention to have. Yes?
Why not?
Yeah.
Not my job to say what you should want, but yeah, I hear that, and I hear that as an intention.
Well, how does it look, as you're being intention setting facilitator?
Yes. No, I mean, that's the makings of an intention right there.
Yeah.
And in a relationship intention, it's kind of paradoxical because you can't really
I can't intend for that
for
person.
him, but you can intend for yourself and for the two of you to a degree, in ways, general ways, like my relationship with my father just keeps getting better. So just for you to be running that, he doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to do anything to part. That's what I'm getting at.
A little more general.
Yeah, and just so that when you think about him, you're thinking in terms of what you want.
Yes.
And that's what we do.
And I liked also it being that I did do the U-turn and say, like, I want to look at the meetups with my dad as this easy breezy familiar thing. It's not an event.
It's light.
It's not an event. It's like, hey, what are you doing? Okay, yeah, sure. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of thing. Not where it's this thing of like going to more extended family type of, you know what I mean? It's like layers to the relationships, right?
Yes.
And you're getting dressed and stuff. No, if I feel like rolling out of bed and and I see my father, that's more like it, because I don't like that uncomfortable, little awkward, performative feeling, going into anything, but definitely in meeting up with my father,
right,
or my brother, like, I want this to be as easy breezy, like, as it was with my mom, so I noticed that, at first I got a bit sad about it, but then I kind of went into the, again, spiritual gain, and thinking about the intention that I just stated about it being easy breezy with my dad, yeah. So it was, it was interesting because I guess I never really, I mean, I've definitely spoken about my dynamic, with my parents, you know what I mean? And their dynamic and how I experienced their dynamic and all of that. But I don't think but I think I've done it more on in an analytical way, like kind of like analyzing it all, and not really from this like energetic, like the felt experience of the interaction, the engagement, the relationship, the dynamic,
right,
and just bare bones, it just felt like, I was like, yeah, there's not that level of familiarity, that we we need to get to know each other more. You know what I mean? And uh that he doesn't like know me like how my mother knows me, you know? And but that can change, you know?
Absolutely.
That can change. And I think he wants it to change. Like that's what he is showing me,
Nice.
you know? So I thought that that was really nice. I did feel very much I just felt like there were a lot of times in this past week where I felt, and I think maybe it was just, you know, with the whole going to the botanical gardens and stuff. And even though there was like such a great experience with going to the apartment, you know, and not feeling like, "Ugh," and even the botanical gardens, it was like I felt like, yeah, it kind of reminded me, you know, like it brought back some memories, and it did, you know, touch me. Um, and I think kind of conjured up the memories of my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also didn't walk away feeling like heavy and depressed and like in
Yeah.
grief or anything like that. Um, However, in the middle of all of that, um, and I don't know, I'm wondering if this was more like coming that whole thing with the anxiety creeping up whenever you're feeling, you know, you're feeling like you're going to the more like the deeper emotion, you know.
Yes.
But I just felt so, like, the weekend, like, after the apartment thing, the weekend going into the botanical gardens visit, all the way up until, I would say, yesterday, where I just wasn't really feeling good within myself. Like,
Feeling
I wasn't, like,
physically, mentally, emotionally.
feeling physically, I was feeling very heavy physically.
Mm-hmm.
And also looking in the mirror and just being like, you know, just not, I was feeling kind of bored of myself or with myself. Like it was feeling like that.
Mm.
And then there were just some other stuff that came up. I think in the middle of that, this is why I'm saying the whole grief anxiety thing, you know, grief anxiety thing maybe have been happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the same time, I felt like, wow, I'm really missing my mother's I'm really missing my mother in my social life. I'm telling you, I'd like hanging out with my mom.
Yeah.
Like, we would walk together. Like, she would like the charm in life, you know what I mean? She liked the charming stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
like that shit, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
like going to the artisanal shops and the wellness stuff. And, you know, like she was someone that she was very much integrated in all areas of my life, but especially my social life.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like, okay, go out to eat with my mom. Let's take, you know, or to come hang out. Let's take a walk. And it just felt, I was having these thoughts, Stephen. I don't know. It just, these were the thoughts that were coming up, was like, it was just feeling like life was a little colorless without her here.
Mm-hmm.
And I started going a little existential with like, I don't know. It almost felt like my mom was very much integrated in my purpose or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like I liked doing that with her. I'd like it was just such a good chunk of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm just kind of like I don't really want to do that with anyone else. Like right now, right? I just, so I was having some thoughts and I was just like, I don't know if these are really helpful to have, but they're coming up. Um, about just life seeming a little more colorless.
Sure. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, please.
Well, that it feels,
What
it
an evolution
seems,
in 15 weeks. Look at what we're talking about right now, right?
yeah,
Interesting.
the colorlessness, if you will, a few months into this experience.
About to be 6.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It is what it is. It's there. So there's no reason to resist it. And just like with anything, it's going to mean what you make it mean. You know, to me, sitting in this seat on this subject, it doesn't sound at all out of the ordinary by any stretch. And
Okay.
what it does say to me, though, in terms of our practice, is, and this is where I see most people would just be, oh yeah, it's just colorless now. It's not so much fun. I don't know if I want to do this with anyone else. Nothing, quote unquote, wrong with any of that, those thoughts, that energy. What tends to happen is people will stay in that for a very, very, very long time, if not forever. And so there's, as is often the case, you know, something of a dance with all of this, right? It's like, yeah, that's, I can already tell from talking to you that you're not going to feel this way 3 months from now. It'll be something different, or
Okay.
it will evolve in some way,
I mean,
you
it's
know.
been evolving these past 15 weeks, right?
Exactly. And so the whole idea of
'Cause I thought that
healing.
was new. I thought that was interesting that I was having these thoughts, feelings, you know? Like
Why? Interesting. How? Like, what do you mean?
I don't know. I didn't realize how integrated my mother was in my life.
But that's
Like,
part of the process
yeah,
of
like,
missing somebody, is
yeah.
you continue to live life. It's like, wow, I miss them here, I miss them here, I miss them
Okay.
there. And that's pretty normal. And I think it's really useful and valuable to be conscious of that as you go, because every single one of these experiences. So the idea is to just not stay there. Why would a person stay there? Usually because they'll create some meaning of what's happening. I'll never be happy again. Nobody, I can never be happy. You know, all those kinds of
I don't
things,
feel
which you
that way.
don't even have.
Yeah.
So allow it to be. What I started to say before is the process of healing is a process, energetically speaking, of movement. When energy stagnates, that creates illness and dis-ease. When energy moves, that is part of healing. So if this is where you are today with regard to colorlessness or less colorful, right? That's just the way it is. That doesn't mean it's going to, you already said it's not the same today as it's been. It's moving, it's changing. So just allow that to keep going. But the other significant piece to address when the time comes is intention, right? Wow, I
Mm.
did all these things with my mom, and she and I had such a unique way of being together, and it was so easy and fun, and I really miss having that with her. And what I had with her was this level of, what I'm going to make things up now, a level of connection, being seen, having fun. So connection, being seen, having fun.
Wow, wow. When
Which,
you said being seen, Stephen, like that got a little, that struck a chord.
all right. So then you
Wow.
have a desire for that. Don't lose that desire. What you
And
have
like
to lose.
really being seen and heard
Yes, yes.
and
And
heard.
you,
Oh,
yes. And so,
that's right.
huh?
Is that a trite thing to want?
No. Well, not to me, it isn't.
I know,
What?
because
Who
everybody's like,
doesn't want that?
everybody wants to be seen and heard.
Well,
But it's true. It's true.
yeah, you're going to give up that desire just because other people? What are you,
No,
nuts? No.
no.
So I've completely lost the track that I was on. But the intention piece. So you take the connection, you take the desire for connection, the
Right.
desire to be seen and heard, the desire for the fun, the desire for that, and you let go of any idea that your mom was the source
Sole
of that.
provider. Right.
In
Right.
other words, yes, she was. She is a vessel, a conduit for the two of you to have shared what you did. Now she's not physically here. You'll have a different connection with her. And it doesn't mean you have to give up the kinds of experiences you had with her. You already said it's not going to be exactly the same, but you never know. You never know who you're going to meet tonight. You never know who's already in your life, who might step up and start to bring to you, to the degree that you keep those intentions going, similar experiences.
Oh yeah, and I that's why I was saying that I'm very open about the idea of having um other sources for
Yes,
that,
good.
while also acknowledging that my mother was my mother, you know.
Absolutely.
It's
Yes,
there's, like her specific energy and
yes.
dynamic with me is not going to be replicated, but it doesn't mean that it's gonna be unmatched. Do you see what I mean?
Yes,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
And that
and
right
I'm
there,
I'm fine with that, I'm fine with that, acknowledging my mom her unique we had a unique dynamic,
mhm,
and that there's gonna be other dynamics, other relationships that are gonna be very fulfilling, you know,
yes, yes,
to that degree, if not perhaps more, who knows, right? But like, yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. And that's
yeah,
what I'm saying is just this is a critical piece that most people, I think, don't tend to, because they focus on the loss and what's not here, and that's absolutely part of the soup, as it were. It's just
yeah,
not all the ingredients. There's way
right,
more to put in there. This thing's still cooking, and there's a lot more to it. And that's where people fall into a rut, and they show up in my office 15 years after the quote unquote death of a loved one, and they're still kind of where they were in the first few months of it, for this exact reason. The belief, generally speaking, that that person is the only source of the surviving person's, fun, connection, light, whatever it is, and the lack of willingness
mm,
to to transfer that and continue it as an intention to continue to cultivate in other ways, which already is part and parcel of our practice, because it's always about letting go of how things are going to happen.
yeah,
And the
right.
last thing, you stuck in a little thing in there that I heard, that her being part of your purpose, right? Did you say something about that?
Yeah, like um, I guess I don't know if I want to word it like that, but it just felt like with my mom here, um physically here, it just felt like there was a focal point,
Hmm.
you know, intentionality. It brought me a little more intentionality, a little more, yeah. Yeah, I would say that. Maybe that is purpose. Is that purpose? I don't know.
I don't know. Well, all I was going to say about purpose is, if her being here physically was necessary for you to fulfill your purpose, I'm not sure it works that way. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Then she'd still be here.
Yeah, no, it does. I don't feel
That's
like,
all I do. Yeah.
yeah, I don't feel like that
Okay.
necessarily. I
Just
just
checking.
felt more of like her being here physically, like, had me moving more. like just
Well,
move.
yeah, because she was somebody with whom you physically did
Yeah,
a lot of
move.
things.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's,
A lot
yeah,
of engagement. So
yeah,
I guess that's just like no longer that kind of engagement,
right.
and it's like, wow, like I guess I'm just really learning a lot right now about everyday things,
Yes. Well,
everyday
also,
stuff.
Delilah, this is around, you said 5, 6 months. This is around when that stuff starts to
Really?
make
Okay.
itself known, generally speaking,
I like
because,
doing this right here with
yeah.
you in particular because you not only do you work, but you've also experienced this. So I love
Well, and
this.
I don't, we're all different, and yet there are some
Markers.
markers. And, for most of us in our culture, somebody dies, especially in a situation like this where it was very unexpected and a lot, right? And, I mean, how much activity was there leading up to when she passed and afterwards? And there's so much to do. And we've talked about this in this series of kind of putting the pause button on
Yes.
one's
Or the
own self.
heartbreak, for example.
Right.
Like what?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So, and then, in the beginning, everybody's calling and checking in, how you doing, right? And then you've probably started to notice at a certain point, it's like life goes on for everybody, and
Oh yeah.
everybody,
Oh
the
yeah.
calls slow
But
down, and
I'm happy about that.
yeah. Well, I'm just saying. So
Like,
then, with all the less activity, that's all I'm saying. It's just the most normal thing in the world. Then you really notice the quote unquote reality a little bit more.
the everyday things. Yeah, those things that
Especially,
not that you took for granted, but they were just routine, you
right,
know?
right.
They just were, right? And
Yes.
now that they're no longer in the picture, it just feels like, "Oh, wait, like like you said, I think in the very beginning, you're talking about new ecosystem, you know? And that's what I'm finding myself in,
Well,
the
I think,
family systems thing you just mentioned, right?
yeah, that I started to say earlier with your dad and all of that, because
Mhm.
what happens is that's exactly it. I mean, it's biological. It's uh, very earthly. We have in any system, a family is a system, a garden is a system. And there's some drastic change. Wow, this was a family of X number of people, and now it's one less.
Mhm.
And everything will seek it, homeostasis, will seek balance, and the system will rebalance. The system in your family is rebalancing,
Yes.
closer with your father, even thinking about it, your brother too, that relationship and how
Mhm.
it's changing, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's all been true for all these months. And so it will settle, and it is settling,
Mhm.
and it's the most natural thing in the world.
Yeah, that's why I think when you say it was the most natural thing in the world, I feel like the whole experience with the apartment and how I
Yeah.
said it just felt like a natural
Yes, it's
transition and
part of what's,
organic transition. It
yeah,
didn't feel like erasure. It
right.
felt like an evolution, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Which is
and
another
I
way,
felt it that way.
yeah. And that's another way to think of the rebalancing. It's just
Yeah.
evolving to the next place.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, so we'll see. I mean, part of when you talked about, whenever I'm ready to like start looking at intention, whenever I'm thinking about the colorlessness, or less colorful,
Mhm.
um, now that my mom is no longer physically here, I did actually go there when I was thinking about the colorlessness, and thinking about, well, what does bring me joy? What does make me want to move and initiate and want to do something, like just trying to kind of seeing, you know, ways in which um, I can feel more of an arousal for life, you know, and engaging in the world.
Mm-hmm.
um,
May I backtrack on part of that conversation?
mhm.
So there's a thread here that I think is important based on what you're just saying. Other ways to quote unquote cultivate, find that, right? And yet when we spoke, you you said somewhere on this video, if I don't get it right, um, that when I mentioned about being seen, that struck
Right.
a particular, before you judged it and made it a
So,
oh, that's what everybody says. It's a trite thing.
so
Okay,
trendy.
so we're going back to that moment where it was truly obviously a touching idea for you.
Yeah.
So, and we're talking about your intention for this process. And I know that a big part of that, if not the whole thing, is your cultivating your relationship with the divine and
Hmm.
two-way communication with the divine, and no energy in our earthly experience will deliver to you more being seen than spirit.
Okay. What does that look like?
It
Being seen by spirit.
well,
I feel like isn't aren't you being seen all the time?
yes, but it's about you experiencing it.
Okay. So how would one experience that?
Well, how did you experience it with your mom?
Um, she would just ask me about what's going on in my life, and when I would share stuff with her, she would really listen. Like she was really listening, like listening to what I was saying.
So
Um,
as you cultivate a two-way communication relationship with the divine,
okay.
it will be the same. How that will come to you, I don't want to say. I don't know.
Hmm. Okay. Thank you for that. Because
But
because conceptually you're like, yeah, being seen by the divine, but then I'm like, wait, aren't you always seen by
of course, but do you experience it on an hourly, daily basis?
and then when I'm like, how do you experience what does that look like when you experience it? And you're like, well, how did you experience with your mother? Good
Yeah,
call.
you'll know, and you'll know. So as you develop your relationship
She seemed interested.
and your communication, you will you can't not experience it, I dare
Giving
say.
you attention.
Yeah, understanding you, seeing you,
Mhm.
knowing you. So how
Want
is that?
wanting to.
Yes, yes, exactly. With
Mhm.
more love than,
Mhm.
So I just wanted to make that connection.
Thank you for that. That's good. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Um, do you have some time to talk about the ways in which you've been connecting with them?
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
I'd
Do you
love to
want
hear
to?
about that because I don't want to go into next week feeling, with this still and
So do you want to focus me a little bit and ask me any specific questions or start me
yeah.
somewhere?
Well, I think that this came up about 3 weeks ago where I was welcoming my mother and Duder, the divine presence,
Hmm.
um, uh,
It didn't help.
here in our live stream. And you were like, oh, yeah, they're like talking all the time. And I was
Yeah.
like, really? Oh, but I think that at that time I had like a very long update to give. It was like some crazy shit. So, so we didn't get it. And then last week's kind of the same thing. We didn't get to it. So it was essentially your responding that like they were connecting with you, communicating with you
So
all the time.
it's it's been 19 and a half years since my partner left this plane. And when, and this book is about the first year after he was gone and all communication we had, et cetera, et cetera. So during that year, it was a lot of, wow, this, you know, I want to just be able, like you have an intention for two-way communication. I had the exact same thing. And over the years, it has just evolved. You know, I think the easiest way to think about it is, you know, if you've had a relationship with someone, romantic, intimate, and then you break up, but you stay friends or you stay connected in some way, it feels to me like the same thing. We didn't break up, we got broken up, but our relationship just continues on. And here we are 20 years later, and I still feel very connected to him. And he kind of comes and goes. And I used to think I always knew when he was around. And then I realized one day, I'm like, well, it could be he's around and I'm just not noticing it, you know? And over all this time, the relationship evolves, the connection evolves, and yet remains the same. It's like any friendship, any relationship you would have. It's like, oh, we met and at the library and started talking and became super good friends, and that was 20 years ago. And we've had all these, you know, evolutions of our friendship and who we are today, 20 years from when we, you know, were exactly the same and not at all the same. And I would say the exact same thing with him. But the moment that you invoked this book in our first session, he flooded the zone. And yeah, because this is a him and me project, to be sure.
Yeah.
And he loves this whole, I don't know what the heck all he's doing over there as a spirit, but I know that he has a definite interest in what we've touched on here, which is just the whole, like, this thinning of the veil, you know, and this demystification of death and all of that. And I felt your mom too, very much present, especially in those first many weeks and even today. So,
how so?
You know, the way I never see anything, I never hear anything. But for me, it tends to be a combination of some impression on my physical body. I don't like calling it the chills or that kind of thing. It's very, very similar, and it might be exactly the same thing, but different, just like different spirit guides might show up in a different way. Same with these guys. So I've experienced your mom as just being very, very light, like feathery light. She and I knew each other, but not, you know, like this. I think it was the sense I got from her was really just, so for me, the communication is a combination of okay, da, 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 and then some verification with, so it's mostly thought and feeling. Oh, is this the thought that's coming with oh, this is Doris? Is this really Doris? And, you know, then it's emphasized or underscored or yes, you know, that kind of a thing. Them together was kind of fun.
Oh, wow.
You know, as both being part of this project from the other side. And it's, you know, I can't say that I have any particular message.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, do they say anything? Like, what kind of do you have
Well,
common, like, communication?
what I noticed about my partner, like your mom comes when we do this, but I don't have any sense of her especially.
When you were telling me about Judah coming up, I just remembered that in the past week, my lights were flickering again. And they hadn't flickered in a while, you know. But they just started flickering in like the last couple of days.
And have you been having any more times where you really feel your mom? or
Um,
getting signs, as it were, or
yeah, I think that I forgot, but I think it was on Sunday when we went to the botanical gardens, which is one of her favorite places.
yeah,
And I was with my brother, and there was something, I forgot what it was, but there was something that signaled that like she was really liking that we were there
yeah,
together, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. So that's continuing on for you. So for me, it was interesting because that night, the first night, I was like, "Oh, hi, welcome. Of course you're here." But then he stuck around like for weeks and weeks, like in a very, very strong, like, "Oh, so you're here like more than just this project with Delilah," and I'm. It's always it's always an expansion. Every time I think I know how he's going to communicate with me, he changes it up.
So how did
And
it change up this time?
this time he's been changing it up by showing up in a place that uh, how do I explain this? Showing up in a different physical place with a slightly different physical sensation to where I'm questioning. I'm like, is this really you? Is this, and then he'll zip me with the thing that's unmistakable. And
Okay.
I'm like, oh, okay. So I feel like he's training me a little bit,
Yeah.
for the next level,
Oh,
which,
I have another thing
go
too.
ahead, go, go.
Yeah?
Yeah,
No.
please.
Did you finish?
No, yeah, I can come back. Yeah,
Okay.
go.
Another thing that was interesting was my dad found $100 at in my the apartment's pantry,
Hmm.
and I was like, "What?" It's like, "Yeah, it was like in this little bowl. It was like $100," and I'm like, "Huh? Like, how did that? What did that come from? Because the last we knew there was like nothing. And yeah, $100 in like the pantry that was not seen.
Ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I mean, look, I don't put myself out there as any kind of an expert. I put myself out there as something of a demystifier. Somebody died. Okay. What does it mean? Does it necessarily mean
Good.
everything you think it means? Does it
Fire.
necessarily mean everything you've been taught that it means? Does it necessarily mean that you're supposed to be miserable for the rest of your life? I'm that guy, right? And so what I'm saying really is if I can maintain some communication with a dead person from wherever I came from and the kind of person I am and have been, and with this stuff never ever being any part of my life at all, then who can't?
Right.
Basically. And why not? Because from a quote unquote grief and loss psychological bereavement experience that people go through and have all kinds, it can really, 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 really inform one's experience and make it a whole lot. I even said in my book at one point, I'm like, why doesn't everyone do this? It's the easiest thing in the world, to quote unquote talk to, communicate with our loved ones who are no longer here. And, there's a whole scene in my book where we were having a memorial for him
Mhm.
on the beach. Were you at that? I
I
don't
was
think you were in town. Yeah. And we were on the beach, 40, 45 people, whatever, in a big circle and some candles and saying things and burning sage and doing the whole thing. And people coming up and, getting all emotional in a good way. I mean, it's just what you do. It's just what
watch.
you do.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And, but, and we did this thing with everybody had a flower and then they said something and they put it in a vase. And when it was done, there was a nice big bouquet and all of that. And, I would say it was the general tone of a memorial, solemn, not tragic or anything. Nobody's like, not hyper dramatic, but, it was what it was. And, most of the communication that he and I had was through one specific clairvoyant who happened to have been a good friend of mine. And she, so here we are, we're doing this whole thing. We've organized ourselves to do it like people do, and just da 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 da. And, missing him and boo-hooing and all that. And she's like, she didn't say it at the thing, but she told me later, she's like, yeah, he's right there in the middle, like a little kid, we're all standing around on the beach, and he's kneeling down and just looking at everybody and laughing and smiling and having, I'm like, well, if that's how he is, then I feel like an idiot boo-hooing and like wow-wowing because he's like having a good time.
Maybe he appreciates people feeling touched.
Well, and let's face it, he appreciated the attention also.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely he did. And so I don't know, I'm rambling now, but yeah, he's almost 20 years later, he's still around. I don't, I might be getting all of his communication. I might be getting 1% of it. It's hard to tell what's undeniable, what's undeniable. And this is how I was noticing him hanging around, and that's not so usual. There's sort of a coming and going. There might be a couple days, but this was weeks. I'm like, you trying to tell me other things and this and that. But at the end of the day, I was just laughing a whole lot more than usual, and in exactly the same way that I always do with him and always did. And so that continues on. So the very connections that you have with your mom doesn't mean, that it has to end. And I'm like, wow, you are really sticking around. Okay, do you have more things to tell me? So then that's been part of some training too, another upgrade. Like he basically said, yeah, I have more things to tell you. And, so I'm having to up my game in terms of, well, what are you trying to tell me? And I also have used some very rudimentary muscle testing to verify messages. I don't tend to be a great muscle tester on myself. I feel like I can override so much of that stuff. But when it comes to this, that doesn't get in the way. I feel like I get pretty clean reads. And it's almost always yes. So are you saying this and da-da-da? Do a little muscle. Oh, okay. And then I do it from 80 different perspectives, ask the same question all different ways, and the answer's 100% the same every time. And then, of course, this piece, listening to inspiration, like, how does it ultimately feel? It feels fun. It feels light. It feels right. It feels connect, so.
Wow. I love that. And I definitely look forward to connecting even more with my mom. You know who I did think about Jennifer, my cousin who passed away about, it's going to be 4 years now this month.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why. Okay. That's why I was thinking about her. She came up and I thought about the fact that I've never, with the exception of like a dream that I had on my birthday a couple of years ago, I think maybe 2 years ago, where she appeared in my dream so vividly. And that was probably like the only connection that I had. And I thought I made it mean, or what it meant to me was that she was coming into my dream on my birthday to remind me of my intention that I created, that I set when she did pass away, of like honoring her by living my best life. Because she would just always be traveling and going to, Jersey beach house and, like timeshares, Miami and this and that. She was just always so like, I'm just going to go. I don't care if it's corny or cheesy. Like I like, I like what I like and I'm going to have a blast, And it just reminded me of doing that. And that's what I made it mean. But the other day, I just had a thought about Jennifer as I was thinking about my mom and the dynamic, the unique dynamic that I had with her, and
Mhm.
how I never was able to, outside of that dream, get any kind of signs or communication from Jennifer. And I was wondering why, you know?
Do you ask for it?
Back then I hadn't in a while because I guess I just was like, all right, but I guess now that I'm, doing this with my mom,
Yeah,
it came up and maybe
throw
it's
her in the mix.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I just realized that it's approaching her 4-year mark of departing this plane.
Mm. Yeah.
So, maybe that's why I was thinking. I was like, yeah, I never really had, outside of that dream, these types of connections, but maybe I wasn't looking out for them, in the way that as determined
Right.
in
Yeah.
the way that I have been now. I mean, we didn't do all of this when Jennifer passed away,
Right.
you know? So, um, yeah, we'll see how that unfolds. Well, thank you,
Did
Stephen.
that
I
help? Did that
appreciate
answer some
it.
questions?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And I'm a little envious.
Well, the other thing I'll say, it'll make you more envious, is
Oh,
I'm
no.
happy. I'm happy to talk about this anytime because there's it's never anything for me other than fun, peaceful, easy, joyful, whether I'm having a conversation about him or I'm having communication with him. It's just always, almost always. Uh, there was one time where I was pissed off at him. I thought he was being a jerk, but that was a long time ago, and it just was once. And it was also fun in that it was like everyday life.
Was
Like
this the
kind of,
what part in the book or
no,
no?
this part, no, this came way later. This
Okay.
was, the book is all just about the first year.
Right,
And
right.
now this was
This
like
was
year
like way
10
later. Okay, okay,
or
okay.
something. Yeah. And I'm like, are you kidding me with this? And he wasn't. All
Gotcha.
right. Well, anyway, we had a little fight. Not really, but kind of.
Hmm. Year 10.
But again, even that was fun because it just felt so average normal. It's like, well, if anybody's questioning if our relationship is still there, it's still there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I would love to go into that at some point because, the
Anytime.
evolution of that of your relationship, after he had passed is really interesting and encouraging for me.
Good. That's the whole point. It
Yeah.
should be. I
Yeah.
hope it
I
would
mean,
be
all these
encouraging.
stories where, I hear them from that medium that I listen to on Sounds True. Um, people just being, sharing their stories of how they connect,
Yeah.
their
And
stories of
there are
what they did
tons
after
more
their
of
loved
them.
ones passed away, like how they transformed their lives
Yeah.
and intentions and stuff. Like those are really inspiring for me,
Yeah. Good. Good.
So,
Good. All
all
right.
right. Thank you, Stephen. Once again, Steven
You're welcome.
Morrison, creator of Spiritual Workout, author of An Extra Year, Grief and Loss in the New Age. My name is Delilah De La Rosa. I am the person receiving this unconventional wisdom on grief and loss from the master facilitator here. And our intention is that this will at some point become conventional wisdom on grief and loss.
Yes. Yes,
All
please.
right. So we will keep going next week, see how things unfold. They're unfolding, how they keep unfolding, evolving. Very interesting, very interesting things. Like you get to know yourself more, you get to know even a relationship with the departed, like you get to know your relationship with them
Yeah.
while they were here and now while they're no longer here.
Right.
So very interesting experiences and unfoldings here. So yes, next week, YouTube live stream, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern.
On Wednesday.
On Wednesday. Today was Thursday.
7.
We had an exception.
Thank you for that. All
Absolutely.
right.
All right. Next week, Wednesday. Bye,
See you
everyone.
then. Bye.